La Choria, signorinza. La Choria. Sì, signorinza.
They just slide.
This is our current project out in the backyard. We are building what are referred to as hugelkultur beds, also sometimes pronounced as hugelkultur, at least here in the United States. Basically, we are building one particular version of these, which is a semi-buried method, where you're not making a hugely tall mound and you're not using full logs. Some people make these as almost like 4 to 6 foot tall mounds with full tree logs buried in them. But we're doing the method where you dig out a little bit of the ground and then put in your chopped up logs. Then you cover those with the sod that you have removed, and then layers of green and brown. Those layers are things that we have been composting and things that we have been ripping out of the garden, and fallen leaves, sticks, twigs, etc. The brown things will break down slower along with the wood, both creating a drought-resistant environment and feeding the plants. Additionally, breaking down, the decomposing, will release heat in winter and prevent some things from getting as cold damaged as they might have otherwise. Anyway, the green things will break down very quickly and become faster and more readily available food to our crops. This one has already been planted. We have not actually gotten in these ones because our main challenge has actually been procuring enough wood. We were using the wood that was on the property when we moved in, but it took most of it to do this bed. This is the remainder. And then we have been searching on Facebook Marketplace and on Craigslist for wood that people are giving away as firewood, and we are chopping that down to put in. Unfortunately, all of our loads have to be carried in our SUV, which is small, so we have to do multiple trips, which was actually during a manufactured gas crisis, so that was interesting. And additionally, there are only some kinds of woods that you can use. You don't want to use something that's super acidic. Obviously, we can't do like black walnut because it will kill what we're trying to grow. And some woods are very difficult to split. Now, I'm very blessed by having someone willing to split what we were able to pick up, which is pecan wood, which is still a hardwood and is very, very difficult to split, but we're making progress. You can hear the axe going in the background. Anyway, so I will record this process as we go and then let you know over the next 6 months how what we've planted has done in this style bed. Now, I do want to say just, as you can see, my sides right now don't have anything shoring them up. Some of the research I did said that was fine, and some of it recommended potentially putting some bricks or some stones. I haven't decided if I'm using these old bricks that I found on the property, or if I'm going to go and try and collect some stone in the wilderness out of areas it is fully legal to do so. We did research where in our area you're allowed to just go collect rocks. Again, that would be kind of a pain in the ass to fit in the SUV, but I think I would prefer stone. Anyway, I'll let you know what decision I make. So now you can see the basis of the bed, which I have stacked thoroughly with the chopped wood. So this is what's on the base of this. The exact same thing is buried under there. Now, the reason why it has this sort of keyhole cutout is so as we're working, we can come through here and reach more easily everything that is planted. So each of these beds, and there's going to be 4 shaped like this, have a little keyhole insert so that we can go in and more easily take care of what we're growing. There will be one there and one there in a pattern around a central bed that is just really small and circular. Unfortunately, we had already planted a pawpaw here, and so we're having to just kind of have a little keyhole for it as well. You can't really plant trees in hugelkultur beds because as the wood breaks down, the beds themselves will sink and become less high. If you have a tree in the bed, that can actually warp the tree, bend the tree. It'll go from being, nice and straight to tilted like that. So we can't actually build the same kind of bed around the pawpaw or plant any trees in these. Just things that either are annuals and have to be planted every year anyway, or that are short-lived perennials where you only get a year or 2 out of them. Yeah, here we go. Now to layer on the sod and the brown and green. So now we have flipped over the sod that was pulled out when we dug this bed, which was a combination of clover, violets. I think there was probably still a little bit of chicory in there, probably just the end of it. A lot of henbit, a lot of lamia, and some grass. So that will provide some quick food to what we plant, and then we'll put on a layer of brown, a layer of green, a layer of brown, the soil and the compost. It is the next day because we got tired and had to go in and take care of some other things in the house. And we are layering brown, which you can see these dead leaves, and green, which is clover and violets and woolly betony and basically anything that we needed to pull out of the garden somewhere anyway is going on here. And then it'll get soil on top of that, compost on top of that, and then we can plant into it. So there you go. You can, if you want, put this stuff through like a mulching or breaking down process.
Yeah,
you can make it, right, you can make any of this smaller if you're using like sticks for your brown. Some people use the grass clippings from their lawnmowers for the green. All that does is make it break down more rapidly, so it's quickly available to your plants. This will break down a little slower, but that's okay because we are putting on some compost that'll be very available very quickly. Alrighty. Now that there is a layer of brown covered over by a layer of green, thanks to Tina going and clearing out some of the beds that were overcrowded or where stuff was coming up that wasn't what we wanted there. We love garden volunteers, but occasionally something decides to just take over. Our woolly betony has decided to just take over. And now we're covering it over with the soil that we dug out of this area when we dug the beds in the first place. So again, it's pretty labor intensive, and if you intend to do the deeper style where you're essentially burying entire logs, it might be worth it to rent, an earth mover of some kind. But because we were doing the shallow style, it was something that we could dig ourselves even in a high clay environment. One note on this soil packing is that you want as much as possible with the soil that went on before the brown and the green to pack any holes between the wood. We did this, and I forgot to get it on camera, but if you see this bed that I'm preparing here, you can see that there's gaps where the wood is not precisely fitted together, and even if I was being really careful and making sure all the wood touched, there would still be small gaps. When you do the first round where you're dropping in sod and soil on top of this, try and pack any holes. Otherwise you get voids, which can lead to problems later on, especially with the root systems. So just like when you're potting a plant and you water the soil to make sure there's no voids, or if you're planting in your garden and you water in something to make sure there's no voids, you want to put soil in there and then water it to make sure it all sinks in. Alright, I'm gonna go help Tina now, so she's not the only one shoveling in like 90-degree weather.
It's only 80.
It's only 80 today, yay! It was 90 yesterday and it was pretty brutal. Okay. So, the soil that Tina is adding to the beds now is soil that we actually purchased from a place that breaks down food refuse from school cafeterias in the area and then mixes it with native soils. So this is already a blend that's pretty full of compost. And then they also sell their compost not mixed into the native soil and sand. So we ended up actually buying both, and there's this giant pile over behind our vehicles. Big piles of soil and compost. We were able to buy essentially an entire flatbed truck full for $370. So if you are having to buy a lot of soil or a lot of compost, it's worth it to buy it by the truck full instead of by the bag full. You save so much money. And this is a very sustainable because they're using the native sand and soil, and because they're using refuse, you know, reduce, reuse, recycle. Anyway, so now Tina is covering over the soil from our own backyard, which is on top of those green and brown layers, with the soil that is a little more nutrient rich, has some sand mixed in for drainage, and just is really beautiful and soft and will be very nice for our seeds. And then on top of that, we'll be putting a layer of compost. So it's a many layered bed. It's kind of like making lasagna, although lasagna beds are actually a different thing, so maybe I shouldn't have used that comparison.
Yeah, lasagna beds are a thing, not this.
Right, lasagna beds are a thing, but not this. This is a Hagokultur bed. So, in progress, done but for trellising. Now you can see two beds, one that is done and one that is almost done. We haven't put the compost on, and there's just a little bit more soil that Tina is adding right now. But this actually has now about 5 to 6 inches of soil between the good stuff that we bought and the stuff that we took out of our own garden. It needs that much or more in order to have enough space for the roots to go down. And you could put more if you wanted to, but the minimum is essentially 4 inches, and ideally somewhere around 6. Alright, so I'm just gonna show what we've done in terms of the style of the beds. We walk up, and then we can walk in and take care of things, and walk over and walk in and take care of things. And we have another path out right here. There will be 4 paths out and 4 paths into in the keyhole style when this is done. So essentially 2 more beds, one there, each built this style around a central circle. All right. So we got in 3 of the 4 beds, and we started on the 4th. But now we have to take some time and do the other project we had this weekend, which is to get in the extension of our kitchen culinary herb beds. You can also see my other project in the background, I think, which is that I was painting some chairs to use outdoors, because why not do multiple things in a weekend? But anyway, we are extending our culinary herb bed to have some more of plants we use a lot of, and a couple that we didn't have access to yet. So like I just got some winter savory, I got some epizode that's going in. And this is just sort of a side project on top of everything else that we're doing. Anyway, I thought I'd show what we've done. So there were bushes here that were not ones that we wanted to make use of. We have a lot of it on the property. It's box. We had so much box, and they weren't very happy here because they weren't correctly planted. When they were planted just on top of this gravel from the driveway, and they had a really shallow root system and they were really sick and they were really struggling. So we pulled those up, chopped them up, and used them as part of what went into the hugelkultur beds. You can see, you've seen it on video before. This is the culinary bed that we put in last year. It has rosemary, green garden sage, oregano, marjoram, there's curry leaf in here, there's catnip in here, there's parsley, Italian flatleaf parsley, and we could easily just blow through the herbs that we have in this with our cooking. We use a lot of it, so we are just making 2 more. And the importance of location here is that that's the door, hi Ian, that's the door into the kitchen. And the idea is that you don't want to have to go all the way to the back of your property when you need herbs for cooking. You know, I don't want to have to run out here every time I'm making a red sauce to get basil and have to go all the way back there. I want it, yeah.
Because that's where the basil's going.
Damn it. Bad example, because it's going with the tomatoes because it grows well right next to tomatoes.
Something I'm going to point out, not only is that the door into the kitchen, that's south.
Yes.
Which means this is wonderful, sunny exposure for the herb beds that want a lot of sun during the morning.
Right,
and
so
sort of through the day.
if I want rosemary or oregano, I don't want to have to run all the way back there every time. Let's use a more accurate example. Yes, work for my caprese salad. So this is the old one that we've been making much use of. And this is going to be the 2 new ones. Fantastic. And then eventually I may actually plant some more in the bed behind Ian, which right now does actually have our culinary lavender, but is also full of other things.
It's full of stuff, and we haven't disrupted it since we moved in much because we had other projects that were higher priority.
Right.
And if you strip out the plants that you don't want and don't replace them, all you're really doing is giving an opportunity to wreck the soil.
Yeah. So right now there's some lovely succulents in there. There's some roses, which I wouldn't disturb. I would keep them. And you don't necessarily have to throw something out if you pull it out of a bed. You can just move it to elsewhere. There's some woolly betony in there. There's rose, there's holly and box and lots of English ivy. There's some lavender that we have made use of, and that would just stay. But eventually we may clear this out and put more culinary things in here. This does get more shade because of the house, so that would be something we'd have to take into account.
We have some little baby bug eyes pincers.
Oh!
Here's one there, and there's some over there. And there's some right here.
Neat!
Mantis.
Yes!
We want those.
Yes, leave those alone. Do not disrupt. So what Tina has found, having gotten that out of the pot, is that it's pretty root bound. It had basically outgrown that pot while we ripped out the bushes and prepared the beds. And the roots are just tangled in on themselves.
Honestly, with how root bound this is, it was root bound before it got to us.
Yeah. So what she's doing now is very gently untangling those roots, because if you do it too harshly, it can damage the plant. But if you don't do it at all, it may not spread them out and gain access to the nutrition it needs in order to recover from transplant shock and from being root bound in the first place. So it's kind of a risk to tickle apart the roots, but a necessary one. So that's what she's doing.
Yeah, there's going to be some root breakage, but as long as it's not too much, hopefully this will be good enough for it.
This one that is going in is a purple sage. So I got myself a meat grinder, and we are going to start making our own sausage, which means I was going to need more sage than my one plant over in the original bed. It's a lot cheaper to make your own sausage than buy sausage. So as she's watering, she's being careful not to soak the leaves, which can make the plant vulnerable to mildew out here. So she's being careful to really water the ground and the roots. Fill in any voids, give it a nice drink, but not water the leaves. The bug spray must be wearing off.
I don't know what's different in my diet from this year or last year or whatever, but I've actually not been getting bothered too much yet.
That's nice.
Yeah.
I get bothered a lot. So weird that we have catnip, not catmint, which is what Tina is planting. We have catnip in our yard, and neither of our cats go up to it or try and make use of it at all. It just chills. We planted it so we'd have it for them because, you know, we weren't going to plant the first culinary bed for the house and not put in anything for, you know, some members of our family. But they're completely uninterested. So Tina has been putting a little pile of all-natural fertilizer. And then when she digs to plant the potted plant, she's mixing it very thoroughly in.
More of that in there.
We want them to have access to it, but we also don't want it to be the only thing they're touching with their roots because it can burn them.
Also, especially when you're using powdered and dried fertilizers like this, it can essentially become like a gluey paste, and they will not be able to penetrate it. It'll essentially make their roots rot because they'll hit that and then they can't get any further because it can do wonky stuff. So it's really important to mix in your dried fertilizers if you're using them.
Cherry skullcap. Lovely pink blossoms.